A very warm welcome. This is the first session of a course, if we can call it a course, on the spiritual songs, the songs of awakening, songs of realization of some of the great Buddhist masters of the past, and in particular of our Kagyu lineage. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And let's start in the very, very best way, which is reminding ourselves of why we're here, why we're alive, our wonderful motivation, inspiration of bodhicitta, where we turn our thoughts, our awareness, our energy, our hearts to all our fellow beings, humans, animals, and all those in realms we're not aware of. And we feel part of them, which we are. And the biggest, how can you say, cosmic sickness is the illness of ego, where we feel so separate from everybody else. It's the cause of all the problems. So with bodhicitta, we remind ourselves of our brother, sister, mother, father, sentient beings, and we feel very, very close to all of them. Unfortunately, we're human. We have been close to other humans, or to our dogs, our cats, our budgerigars, or whatever it is. We've known what it's like to love and care and be close and to be moved by the reality of other beings. So let's do our bodhicitta prayers with all of that in mind. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings who are so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, may they live long and be healthy, be well provided for and have good friends. May they find respect and live in places of peace, places of plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru amkure marajite karota keyorite jowati olo yane bishul nemale malapa naye kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shammedavane sawa graha bandhanane grihitva sawa bhava pravadina vimuktam arapasha savitva buddha mudra annodkatita sava mariputsarita parishuddhe biga shantu sava marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm a bit nervous about this course because, the one we just finished, we spent all of last year, 37 sessions on the Buddha nature text. And, well, not only have I taught it several times, but I've been taught it, and it's a well-oiled procedure. It's very kind of safe and comfortable for me. I know what I'm doing. I'm in a nice, comfortable territory. This is different. It's not kind of a standard course that I did with Trangwa Rinpoche or somebody, and then I try and pass on the same thing to you. And also, it deals with the most profound, in a way, of the Buddha's teachings. So these are what are generally called Doha. Doha is a Sanskrit term. Doha actually were not always songs. Doha were couplets. And what happened with the Buddha's teaching, if we go back to Buddha's time, they didn't write. They didn't use writing. They didn't use text. Reading and writing were considered something just for merchants. And so in the spiritual world, there weren't scriptures. In Buddhism, everything was learned by heart, passed on as an oral tradition. So very often those oral traditions, which were detailed, were summed up in verses so that people could learn the verses by heart and remember. So, for instance, the text we just went through, we had over 400 verses. But I think if you were there on that course, as we've gone through it in the year, you see the verses are just really the essence. It's a bit like dried packet soup, Maggi and all the others. You buy a packet of powder and you put it in water and it all expands into something you can actually eat. You wouldn't eat it straight from the packet. You'd probably get terrible indigestion. It's the same thing. So in order to give the key points and an order and a structure to a teaching, people learned the essence of it in verses. And you'll see in quite a lot of sutras, they kind of cheat a bit because they say the Buddha taught this and then he put it into verse. I think no way. I think later on the people, when we got a few hundred years later and people got to writing it down, then they included the shortened verse form. So we find in those sutras a teaching, which is prose, and then the memorable verse, which sums it up. Or if we take the very most famous of the Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths, he actually taught that over several weeks to his disciples. It was weeks worth of teaching. They had all day together for many weeks. And we get the version that you can put more or less on one sheet of paper. And the way many, many Buddhists think of it and teach it, and Buddhist teachers too, is that he kind of plonked himself down with 5 disciples and then said that 1 page worth of stuff, and that was it. They'd understood what he got, and they hadn't understood yet. So this thing of making pith verses was there from the beginning. It's the way the Sangha memorized the various discourses and instructions the Buddha gave. And it worked very well in India because they had the monsoon period where you couldn't travel. People stayed in one place, sheltered from the rain. And that was the time when the elders passed on the verses and people learned them by heart. So this has been going on for a long time. But then when we got to the time of the Mahasiddhas, which is a whole historical question in itself. I mean, There must have been Mahasiddhas from the time of Buddha. Of course, Buddha would have taught people, and if they were ready. But the Mahasiddhas became, how can you say, a public feature. Mahasiddhas were mainly a secret feature. When we look at them, when we look at, for instance, very famous text about 84 famous Mahasiddhas, there's a little bit about each. They were all undercover. Nobody knew. They were in villages. They were the local washerman who had a lousy job, low social status, washing clothes, washing other people's dirty clothes. Or they had all sorts of professions. Nobody knew they were Mahasiddhas. They weren't big shots like some Buddhist lamas and teachers at the time. There was all of the pomp and ceremony that the Tibetans have preserved, where when a lama comes, there's all music, instruments, carry a huge umbrella, make a lot of fuss. This is somebody, it's a somebody coming. The Mahasiddhas were undercover Dharma agents of the highest level, and they were like masterclass Buddhists who taught some of the finest Buddhists, and in various ways. So Doha is actually couplets of instructions that could be sung or not necessarily. Then there are two other sorts of Doha, which are called performance verses, where actual professional singers would sing spiritual pieces. It was like the condensed wisdom of the highest minds, and very often along with a story. So when we get a Doha, sometimes we get the story that goes with it. Now, this is very, very important because ideally, of course it doesn't happen like that, but ideally, then Dharma teachings are one-to-one because they are suited exactly to you, exactly to the person who receives them. Of course, there are general teachings which are beneficial for all of us about impermanence and so on, but the real kind of deep teachings have to be tailored to the person and where they are just now in their evolution. So anyway, that's to say something about many of these Mahasiddhas. So it became, how can you say, a public feature from the time, for us looking back in history, we've only got traces from about the 5th century onwards, 5th century of our era. So that's almost hundreds and hundreds, almost 1,000 years after the Buddha, that we start hearing about Mahasiddhas. And the reason that they come from that time onwards is that was the time that Vajrayana, which had been a secret teaching in small groups, that's the time that Vajrayana went from a secret teaching from small groups who lived wild, who lived in caves, in forests and so on, came into the monasteries where there was writing and texts and studies. So that's how we get some trace. And so we only get the very first tantras and Vajrayana teachings around sort of the 5th century of our era. Very first one is Manjushri Tantra, then Tara Tantra, and then more and more. By the 8th century, when Dharma went to Tibet, there were quite a lot of tantras, and by the 11th and 12th century, when there was this huge wave of transmission to Tibet, giving rise to our Kagyu tradition and the Sakya tradition, and then a few centuries later giving rise to the Gelugpa tradition. By that time, there were an incredible number of tantras that were being taught in India. So there were performance dohas, which were not necessarily sung by realized beings. They were sung by singers, singers and storytellers. They'd tell the story, the context, they give you the context of why this teaching was given to that person at that time, and then you get the actual song. So there were performance dohas. Then the other main category of dohas are what are called Vajra dohas, or Vajragiti they were called. And Vajragiti were only performed in what some of you may know, in what are called Gana chakras. Gana chakras are spiritual feasts. They are a special part of Vajrayana, which involves having a lot of fun, but very sacredly. So based around a feast with food and drink and dancing, there is a very sacred moment of offering everything one is. It's basically, the whole point of all of the Dharma is giving up your ego and serving everybody. So as a group over a feast, there is a ritual of singing, and during that time, very often, there are spontaneous songs of realization. But that is, it is only for the initiates, only for the people who've done enough practice that they've got to the stage where you do have Vajra feasts. So we have them in our Dharma centers sometimes. They're called sok, in the use of Tibetan sok pujas. And people bring lots of biscuits and goodies and fruit and pile it all up. And depending on the centers, sometimes a bit of alcohol, which you're allowed a tiny bit of a teaspoonful, so that not everybody's. But that was a special sort of doha. So here we're looking at doha as they've been preserved, and we have two main areas of that. We have the ones that came from India. With those, we have the texts, but not the context for most of them. For some of Saraha's longer dohas, there we have a story, but mainly we've just got the verses of realization. And then we have the Tibetan ones, and the most famous of those, probably the sort of biggest volume, are Milarepa's songs. And they're more or less, each song does have a story, and that shows us how pertinent each song is, and how the content of the song really addresses either simple village people or advanced yogis or wherever Milarepa is. So we have, I mustn't get too distracted because I waffle on a lot and we haven't done any dohas yet, but the main collection of Milarepa's spiritual songs was compiled some 300 years after Milarepa by somebody called Sangyon Heruka. And I think many of you have seen those songs and Milarepa's life story, which he also put down. So the official story of him is that he gathered together, all these various oral traditions of Milarepa's songs and put them together, but also that he himself was one of Rinpoche's reincarnations, Rinpoche being one of Milarepa's two main disciples. So he had a sort of his own memory, and he gathered together, and he was quite scholarly, and so the language is very nice. In the Tibetan, the language of Milarepa's songs is very nice. There are some earlier collections And then when we get to those, Milarepa's language is much simpler, earthier. It's more of a peasant's language than a scholar's language. It's more direct. It's quite interesting to see the difference between the two. And to my shame, one project that I was given and never did, was, I think in the year before he died, Akon Rinpoche was very, very excited and happy because he'd found in Tibet a text which didn't exist outside, and it was the third Karmapa's collection of Milarepa's songs. The third Karmapa was very shortly after Milarepa. It's much closer in time to Milarepa than the one that's been translated into English. And so a project at Akon Rinpoche wanted that translated into English, which wasn't easy. It's got very ancient language and so many local terms that unless you can work with a really incredibly knowledgeable Lama who knows about ancient language and old terms, there's no way you can translate it. Because, as a good translator, you can't guess. You need instruction from somebody who knows. So I don't know when that project's for, next life maybe, but Milarepa's songs are very famous. These songs are not like the teachings we've been studying together these past years. They are, over the years, we've studied a topic in a very structured, organized way. These dohas just are spontaneous expressions from the top, from the end of the story. We saw in this year's course about Buddha nature, the whole journey through the different levels, and when you get to the end and beyond it. These are songs from there, and they just impact you how they impact you. They don't come with a lot of blah, 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 just a simple blah, blah, blah that explains, if it says the three this or the two that, then to make sure you've got the right three and the right two. But it's not a lot of expanded explanation. They impact you how they do. Very often that impact is sacred. Even if you don't understand it, somehow you know that's what it's about. This inner part of us, our Buddha nature, somehow somebody knows. That's as deep as it gets. That's what it's really all about. That's where we're going. And so it should impact most of us because we have Buddha nature. And then the more you meditate, the more you actually practice, then the more you will savor this. Savor, yeah. Let's use that word as an example. It's words. But if you are, what's the word, a gourmet, and you've really tasted exceptional food in the world's best restaurants, you can read about the way somebody cooked it and then put this sauce on it and then served it like that. Even though you're reading it, you can almost taste it. Yes, even though you're just hearing the words. So for those of us who are meditators, then the more we meditate and the more fruitful our meditation is, the more these words will sweeten our heart and make us feel yes, and make us glow and shine. So that's a bit of an introduction. And so we're going to start with a Doha from the 16th Karmapa. As you know, he was very special in my life. I had a very fortunate opportunity to spend many months with him, 6 months non-stop every day, and then some more weeks before and after. And every day was like being with Buddha. Everything he did was the apex of mindfulness without trying to be mindful. Everything he did showed you where we're going. Everything he said, his whole presence was just it. In our Buddha nature teachings, we saw it's called it, that, the true nature. It was a wonderful experience for us all just to be with a living, open example of that true nature. So the 16th Karmapa didn't write a lot of, or sing a lot of spiritual songs. He wasn't a singer in the traditional Tibetan sense, but his voice was something, I must say, one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard. And before we start looking at ideas and doing Dohas, I'd like to tell you about an amazing experience in France. In France, somebody had lent us, for the Karmapa, a stretch Mercedes. So we had this beautiful stretch Mercedes for taking him places. And for a bit of the time, the rest of the time, he came in my car, which was a very, very nice car I'd just inherited from Katia's father, who died. Same car as the French president. So it was a really beautiful Citroën DS, top of the range, like a spaceship. And it's one of those that rises off the ground when you turn off the... He really loved that. It's kind of like, you rise up ready to go, and then incredibly silent. The carpet was that thick with sponge underneath it and so on. So anyway, we got this stretch limo. And once I had to go somewhere, not with the Karmapa, with Jamgon Rinpoche to get something. So we were both sitting in the back and the chauffeur was driving us at the front. Then Jamgon Rinpoche looked at me with a sort of lovely twinkle in his eye. And he had one of these Tibetan silk shirts with pockets. And he pulled out a cassette. And this was the days when cassettes were quite new. And there was a cassette player in the back of the limo. And he put it in, and he had a recording of the 16th Karmapa singing, and he put it on, and I was in paradise. There was something in that voice that, they say Buddha's voice has 60 different qualities. It was just, he didn't want it to stop. Of course, it did stop when we got somewhere, and but anyway, Karmapa's voice. So he made a few Dohas. This one I like very, very much. And I have the transmission for it. So it's the one that some of you have already seen, because I put it on Facebook. So let's just do the Doha itself. Oops. I have to remember what to do here. Share the screen. Okay. Wave if you can see it. Yeah. Thank you. Namo Gurave Palamasasuntu Peku. Devotion of the three kinds of faith arises towards the Guru, who is the combined essence of the three kaya. In the heart center, the realm of Chitta's play, the Father Guru, who is the embodiment of the three roots combined. However, in this wheel of confusion, where things seem to last, this good human existence becomes the root of triplicity. Because of this, sentient beings, myself and others, are in a darkness of ignorance. It is like a bubble, impermanent and uncertain. One knows this, yet becomes all the more uncontrollable. Father Guru, through your compassion, sever our delusions. Karma, its cause and effect, is inevitably experienced. It ripens according to how one engages in or abandons virtuous or harmful deeds. Thinking of this, I feel compassion towards all our former parents. Because through ignorance we believe things last and persist, we are shackled by what I did, what he did, in the prison where black and white are distinguished. It's certain that the fruits of all one's actions will ripen in oneself alone. Thinking of this, all sentient beings, my mothers of old, do not misunderstand the causes and their effects, but remain at ease in the state of threefold isolation and practice strenuously for virtue with both body and speech. And if you do this, the magnificent, compassionate heart of the glorious Guru is beyond near and far. When one realizes the quintessential point of the two truths concerning the specific results related to each single cause, the nature of all sentient beings of the three realms is seen as never other than that. In the natural, uncontrived perfection of one's mind, the tangled web of the three realms is unraveled by its own vivid clarity. Through one's innate nature, uncorrupted by conceptual mind, the presence of the Guru becomes the play of an expanse arising of its own accord. When unattached to the extremes of either voidness or clarity, it spontaneously manifests as the essence of the four kayas. This experience is called the Guru and one's mind. But even that is just a name. It's impossible to pinpoint it as anything specific. And from this truth, intense yearning arises. And from this yearning, bodhicitta is aroused. The three realms of samsara are shaken from their depths by the power of truth, the truth of the commitments of their non-conceptual compassion. And through that may the 1,002 Buddhas of the three times make manifest in a single instant this kingdom of Dharmakaya which transcends the intellect, and may they liberate all sentient beings into its essence. So that's me putting it to a tune, which is all right, I think. I think if the Dohas were originally spontaneously sung, and it wasn't like a composer spending a couple of days scratching his head and making a tune and all of this, it just came out, right? So I think I've always thought that Dohas, Milarepa's songs, it's really nice. And it's really nice also with mantras when you're on your own, to find your own tune, to find a tune that really works for you. So anyway, I did that with this first one. I actually got an instrument, made a backing, did the Tibetan, did the translation on top. That's it. The rest of them won't be like that. We'll just be looking at the words. This is what I'd like to do if there were the time. So maybe there'll be one or two more like that, but I was keen to do that. So now let's go through it and sort of see what the Karmapa is sharing with us in this song. So actually he wrote this down, and he started by saying, not even a mere fraction of the virtues resembling those of the Kagyu Guru forefathers are seen in me, a bad son. Nevertheless, because the oral instructions of the glorious holy gurus are so powerful, it's impossible not to obtain a little certainty in them. And so I offer this melodious Vajra song to please the Guru and the Dakinis. So before he left Tibet, the 16th Karmapa received his transmissions from very great masters, the former Taisitupa being a very important one, the former Kontrul Rinpoche being very important. And he shares a feeling that we find shared in many of the Kagyu Dohas, that you feel like nothing, but your gurus are just amazing. And this in itself is helpful for us, because sometimes we've been practicing for years and we feel we're getting nowhere. And when we look at some of the living examples, our great living masters of of all sorts, either eminent ones or some of the more, how can you say, not so famous ones, but the ones who embody so much peacefulness, or who are so naturally caring for everybody, or whatever, Sometimes we look at those and think enlightenment's a long way off, but we should be encouraged. And I think this particular Doha is an encouraging Doha. Encouraging in the true sense, gives us courage, because it starts off, how can you say, looking down. In my mind, this Doha, it kind of starts looking down at the ground, and it gradually lifts up and looks into the vastness of space. And so, anyway, he starts with that bit of prose saying, I'm not so terrific myself, but I've inherited a treasure I can share with you. And then it starts with a Sanskrit homage to the Guru. Namo means praise, and Gurave means praise to the Guru. And so the first verse is, devotion of the three kinds of faith arises towards the Guru who is the combined essence of the three kayas, in the heart center, the realm of Chitta's play. The Father Guru, who is the embodiment of the three roots combined. So this first verse is about a topic called precious human existence. And in a precious human existence, now when we come to the teachings, has 21 qualities, right? So we're looking at those 21 qualities that make you a most valuable and most precious human being amongst other human beings. So we have 8 freedoms, 8 things you're not, just now. We always need to remember that. So, we're not spirits just now. We're not in a bad reincarnation, and so on. 8 things we're not. 10 things we are or we have. They're called the 10 assets. 5 within us, 5 in the world around us. And then 3 types of faith, which is what Karmapa's talking about here. And he's saying, when I think of the Guru, then 3 types of faith arise. So we need to recall the 3 types of faith that we study when we study precious human existence. So I think many of you must know those, because precious human existence is one of the first things we study in our Mahamudra path. So 3 types of faith. First one is what you could call it common sense faith, logical faith. It makes sense. So we have faith in the Dharma because it makes sense. It explains things. It fits with the facts very wonderfully. The more we explore it, the more we compare the Dharma teachings with what we experience out there in life and in our minds, then Dharma's a very clear and amazingly well-organized explanation of it all. So that first type of faith is the faith of reason, the faith of common sense, where it kind of fits, it works. That kind of thing where you have faith in Dharma, or you have faith in your Dharma teacher because what they explain makes sense. The second type of faith is inspirational faith, and that's where we feel faith, trust, because we see what we want to become. We were talking before this session started about, I was talking in response to something about my younger days and being glued to musicians to see how they did it so that I could copy. So you see the result, and that's what you want to be. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a musician. You see people climbing cliff faces, you want to be a climber, a rock climber. There's something inspiring, and that inspires you. So when it comes to Dharma, then there's the Buddha. Buddha's life inspires us. The Dharma inspires us, and even though we don't know much, we want to know a lot more. Our practice inspires us. We reach some degree of stillness, shamatha, some degree of insight into mind itself, and we want to get the whole package like Buddha did, like the Karmapas did, and so on. So there's inspirational faith where we can't say we understand it logically, but we know we're on a path that's taking us there, and we're very inspired to get to the end result. That's the second type of faith. Third type of faith is sometimes called the faith of clarity, and that's the faith of people who have studied, who have practiced, and who've got some degree of the result. So there's no more question. How could it be any other way? It's not like you read about impermanence and the ideas make sense. It's not that you're with teachers who are not attached to anything because they know everything's impermanence and they inspire you. It's your own being has matured in such a way. It's that everything you see is impermanent. There's nothing that's not in a state of flux. Everything's changing. Everyone's changing. You're changing. It's how could it be any other way? You yourself are clear about it because you reached a level of understanding, a realization, faith of clarity. So these are the three types of faith that arise when the 16th Karmapa thinks about his guru, main guru. His main guru was the previous Taisitupa, and then his other gurus. And then when we've studied precious human existence, usually we go on very soon after that to study refuge, because we want to use this, once we realize how precious this life is, we want to commit it to what is worthwhile. So refuge, taking refuge in the Dharma, the Buddha, Sangha, is a very first real step in our own journey. So when we study refuge, we look usually at the threefold refuge. And then if we enter Vajrayana teachings and the Vajrayana lineage and we get instructions, then the whole point of Vajrayana, which is so vast and complex and has so many levels, is very simple. You have a teacher, and that person becomes your main conduit for everything that's going to make you better. You learn from the teacher gives you meditation instructions, the teacher's your inspiration. And in the past, Vajrayana was for people who'd given up everything and were just 24/7 with their teacher learning. It was a very intimate circumstance. They were the fortunate ones who'd escaped everything, escaped samsara, escaped monasteries, it escaped all of the usual stuff and were ready for very deep, powerful teachings, and they were there in ideal practice circumstances with their guru. So when it's like that, our refuge becomes a sixfold refuge, where the Lama embodies, the Guru embodies Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So your Guru is the Buddha in your life. It's like, even though we miss the historical Buddha by so many thousands of years, when you have a living Guru, a proper, authentic Guru, it's no different. Like what they give you is no different from what Buddha will give you. They tell you about your pride, your jealousy, your stupidity, and they show you how to make your mind peaceful, how to make your mind wise. They give you what Buddha would have given you. They are the source of Dharma, not books, not traditions, but they're living teachings. And they are all the Sangha you need. You don't need this supportive companionship of other people on the path. You have the supportive blessing of your Guru. So the Guru embodies Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, but then also what's referred to here as the three roots, which are the roots of our transformation. It's called the roots of accomplishment, the roots. So it's the Gurus and the Yidam practices, and the protectors. They are the roots of our accomplishment. So we have a sixfold refuge: Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, Gurus, Yidams, protectors, Dhamma protectors, when we practice Vajrayana. But all six are embodied in the Guru. The Guru is all of those, is all of them. That's how Vajrayana works. Now, on top of that, he says towards the Guru, who is the combined essence of the three kayas. And so that's wonderful for those of you who've been on this last course. We've spent a lot of time with the three kayas: Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya. And the Guru is all of those, without going into too much detail, and going back in time, because things have changed with time. But, well, let's imagine we are way back. There we are in India, 1,300 years ago, something like that. And you are with the Guru. The way into Vajrayana is you receive empowerment for whatever practice you are going to do. And so that's complicated, depends on the practice, what the empowerment looks like. But very generally, there are three stages of empowerment, which back in the day, back in India, weren't given all at once. These days, when you go and attend an empowerment ceremony, at least, how can you say, formally, in the words that are spoken and the transmission that's given, all three levels of empowerment are given at once. But back then, the first level was given, and somebody practiced. When their practice was fruitful and they were ready, then they were given the second stage of empowerment. Then they practiced according to what they've been empowered to do, the practice they've been initiated into. And when that was good enough, then they got the third level of empowerment. So the first level of empowerment, mind you, Yeah, I suppose it's worth explaining this. It's a bit of a diversion, but it explains the words. Is this helpful, or am I digressing too much? No. And the first level empowerment is called the vase empowerment, and that's where you visualize and you do the mantra, and you need to visualize and visualize until it's all crystal clear. In fact, until there's more or less nothing but that. And of course, visualization ends up with you becoming the deity. So if it's Chinrezig, we need to practice until, as you're sitting in your practice, you are Chinrezig. You really feel like that. You've forgotten who you were before. Ken, you feel you look like Chinrezig. You think like Chinrezig. You care like Chinrezig. You have become totally that. You've abandoned who you were to become this being of light, embodied as Chinrezig. So when that's really worked, then you as Chinrezig, the outer form, you get the second empowerment, which empowers you to then work with the inner channels and energies. And so these are the channels and the energies that move in them, and what those energies convey. So you get detailed instructions, and that's when people do things like Tummo, heat yoga, and other practices. When all those energies have been worked with in a way that purifies your karma, and you've done enough years of that, then you get the third empowerment, which is called the Prajna Jhana empowerment. That's wisdom empowerment. And so there you get deep wisdom insight into who and what you are, and how that corresponds to the who and what everything is. So after the first empowerment, and when you've succeeded in the practice, you will see your teacher as the deity. You won't see a human being anymore. You'll see Chinrezig, or whatever one it is. When you've completed, or when you've matured in the practice of the inner energies, then you will feel the energetic mastery of your teacher, and everything that comes with that is about connection with everything and everybody. Your own body becomes the microcosmos of the macrocosmos. When you're good enough with that, then the shunyata wisdom that combines with the interdependent manifestation of everything becomes revealed through the third empowerment. So we've been looking at that in the Buddha nature teachings, how shunyata is the true nature of all that manifests, but it's not something other. So then you see the Buddha, you see your teacher, you know your teacher in that same, you share that realm of knowledge. So this corresponds to the three kayas. The first is like seeing your teacher as Nimanakaya. The second level is seeing your teacher as Sambhogakaya, and realizing how the inner energies give rise to all the pure lands, the bodhisattvas are, and so on. And the third empowerment and practice, and that gives rise to Dharmakaya. So this is how Vajrayana works for those who are practicing it. So if we go back, devotion arises towards the Guru, who is the combined essence of these three kayas. In our heart center, the realm of the play of bodhicitta. So the very heart of you, time flies by. I think many of us, let's not say in the West, just let's say many of us are quite cerebral. right? So when you sit down and meditate, if you have a center, I think it very often feels like the brain is where you're experiencing everything. It's your kind of, your core. Does that make sense? And for Tibetans, the head is mainly the expression of the body because our five senses are there. And the mind is in the heart center. So I think it was Khenpo Sotim Janso, he said something very funny. He says, if there's a room full of people and somebody asks, who does this belong to? And you want to say me and point. Do you say me and point to your head? Or do you say me and point to your heart? Right. If somebody said me, pointed to their head, you'd probably find it very funny. But if somebody points to their chest and their heart, me, it's very natural. So when we do all this work, empowerment and energy work and so on, the center of you, who you really are, what you really are, your Buddha nature, is here. And because the Guru embodies our Buddha nature and the three kayas, although the Guru is out there, once we've got to mind understanding, Guru is in here. And this is quite important for some of the other Dohas that we'll study. This is why I've spent time on this first verse. So he says, this is wonderful, Guru's there. But then what does the next verse start with? However, terrible word. Good news, right? But, however, in the wheel of confusion, where things seem to last, where we feel we have time, we feel we have, I'm me, I've always been me, I'll always be me. The world seems to last, people seem to last. It's the big illusion. Then this wonderful human existence, where we have all the possibilities together to awaken and to get free. So free, as we saw in our last course, the real freedom. Freedom, we saw freedom from the mind poisons, freedom from dualistic thinking, freedom from ignorance, freedom from samsara, freedom from suffering. So this good human existence, which is the amazing opportunity to do all of that through the wheel of confusion. The wheel goes round and always comes back to the same place. So, wheel of samsara, we get angry and then it blows away, and then we get angry about something else, and then similar thing makes us angry again, and we get desire, and we fulfill the desire, and then we get desire again, and so on. It just goes on and on, habitual patterns. It's a wheel of confusion caused by the delusion that things last. So somebody becomes somebody, we get angry at them. It says, don't bother getting angry at somebody. Impermanence will kill them for you. Impermanence is your hitman. What better revenge could you get than, kill your enemy? Well, impermanence is going to get rid of them. They will be no more. They will be no more. But where things seem to last, we want them. And then the things and the people we have desire for. They change all the time, but well, you all know these stories, so I won't develop it anymore. So then this good human existence becomes the root of triplicity. Triplicity is like duality, but with interaction. We are in a world of separate subject and object. We are the seer, and we see things, and we see people who seem other. We are the hearer, and we hear sounds which are other. We are the taster of tastes which seem to be other. So there's a world of duality, and the interaction goes from duo to three, from two to three, subject-object interaction. And through that, we make karma. So instead of using this precious human existence for what it's best used for, we use it for triplicity, because me, the taster, wants that donut which is to be tasted, and so on and so forth. So because of this, he says, sentient beings, myself and others, are in a darkness of ignorance. And the whole of this triplistic world is like a bubble. Now, of course, it's very nice if I say bubble, put your hand up. Who thinks of soap bubbles? If I say a bubble, I do. But I don't know if they had soap bubbles back in the time. So in the Buddhist scriptures, bubbles are more like the bubbles that you see on dirty water, or I don't think people went around blowing soap bubbles in Buddha's time, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. So when it says bubbles, it means the bubbles on water. In fact, there's an amazing Milarepa Doha, where he turns up at the house of a doctor, Dr. Youngli. And that doctor lives at a crossroads. And he's a bit of a big shot in the village. He's got a nice place. And he often sits there in the day holding court with the villagers. So Milarepa turns up and asks for food. And then Dr. Youngli says, no, if I fed every beggar like you who came through here, I couldn't. Not only that, there's Milarepa, who lives up there in the mountains somewhere, and there's all these people coming by, going to see him. If I fed every one of those asking me for food, couldn't manage. So then Milarepa says, oh, it's me. I'm Milarepa. The dog says, yeah, sure, right, and I'm, or whatever. He says, if you're Milarepa, then you could sing a spiritual song about anything, a Doha. And so Milarepa says, more or less, okay, try me. And so the doctor looks around, and there's this filthy little ditch next to his house. You can just imagine it if you've travelled, You've got a nice house, but next to it's the ditch with the sewage in it and other stuff. And it's kind of fermenting. It's such a kind of, there are bubbles on the top. And he asked Milarepa, okay, sing me a song about these bubbles. And he sings a very good teaching song about bubbles. But anyway, that's the diversion. So he says, this triplistic world that we get caught up in, where there's me and you and hate and love and desire and aversion and jealousy and pride and all that stuff, it's a darkness. Not only that, it's like a bubble. It can just gone anytime. It's really like a bubble, because out of nowhere it kind of expanded up. There's nothing inside it. There's nothing real to it. It's a whole load of hot air. But it's got a shiny surface. And anytime it can go like that. The things we desire, we cling to, they can go anytime. The people we cling to, they change, they die. And then the ones we hate and so on, it's all like a bubble, impermanent and uncertain. And he said, we know this, we read about it, the Buddha teaches us about it. So, are we sensible and just say, it's so true, and change our lives according to that? He says, no, we get even worse. We know it, but we get worse. And it's kind of a classic thing in Dharma people and Dharma centers that teachers talk about. Actually, you get all the wisdom and the knowledge, but because you don't apply it, somehow you get harder. Akon Rinpoche used to say, people are like leather. Either leather gets softer and softer with time, so it's so pliable and such a nice material, or leather gets harder and harder, and then in the end it's unusable. The Dharma people, some get softer and softer, some get harder and harder, more ego. So he says one becomes all the more uncontrollable. Father Guru, through your compassion, sever our delusions. Karma, its cause and effect, is inevitably experienced, and it ripens according to how one engages in or abandons virtuous or harmful deeds. Thinking of this, I feel compassion towards all our former parents. So, seeing everyone as our former kind parents, who when we were helpless babies, gave us food, clothes, gave us all the life skills of dressing ourselves, eating ourselves, being able to speak, communicate. And we think of everyone as having been a very, very kind parent in the past. And then the teachings on karma, I don't need to explain to you. If you do the good, kind, helpful, selfless things, then wonderful, good, enjoyable results come back to you. If you do unkind things and hurt people, then suffering comes back to us. So that's the law behind this whole triplistic world we experience, karma. But people don't know that. And so they follow their desire, they follow their anger, they follow their jealousy. And that brings results. So Karmapa says, thinking of this, I feel compassion. For instance, the 16th Karmapa who wrote this, he had an amazing contact with animals. When he taught in Rumtek, there were lots of dogs in Sikkim, very often tied up, guard dogs. Sometimes they'd tug so hard they'd pull the post out the ground, and they'd actually run to the monastery where he was teaching because they were so attracted to him. He had this wonderful gift I saw many times with animals. He communicated. And I'd take him, he used to buy birds who were reincarnations of his former disciples. And we'd go to a bird breeder, and you'd go into a place where there'd be maybe 100 birds in the cages, and they're all fluttering around, especially because somebody came in, turned the light on, and there's people. And the Karmapa would instantly say that one. We'd just go in the door without even having looked round. He knew which one had been his former disciple, and we go over, and the person, the breeder, said, well, I'll get it out for you, because I know how to handle them, and then take them out and hold them by the legs. And, you have to hold it so it doesn't fly away so that the buyer can look at it. And Karmapa would say, no. And he'd go over and open the cage and talk to it, and the bird would come and hop on his finger, and he'd take it out. By this time, the bird buyer, the bird seller, was freaking out. He was thinking it's going to fly off. What's this? Karmapa would look at it, talk to it so sweetly, like this. Then he'd say, very good, I take this one. He had natural communication with animals. So then this is what he's talking about. When I see them and human beings in suffering, I just see he knew the karma. That before was somebody, your parent, person you loved so much, and now they ended up a bird, an insect. They ended up a beggar on the street, somebody who'd lost their legs, somebody with leprosy, whatever. It says, seeing life as it is, and knowing karma, and with his omniscience, with his deep knowledge, knowing for us the karma we had. When I was driving him, he told me things I'd done as a kid. Just amazing. So as he's thinking of this, I feel compassion. And because through ignorance we believe things and people last and persist, we are shackled by what I did, what he did. This is such a good line. You know, when you meet people who talk a lot, and it gets worse with some of them as they get older, straight away they want to tell you, you know, old people gossiping. Well, then he said that, so I said back to him, and then she said to me like this, and he did this, and I know, and then, so what I'm going to do, it's kind of, and that's their whole world. It's a soap opera of what I did, what he did, what's going on, what Trump did. Look at this last year. Everywhere, you can't get away from it. You know, more about Trump, more about Trump, more about Trump. And people talk about it. It's what they talk about when they meet. What I did, what he did. It's a prison. So in that prison, it's certain that whatever we do in relation to this prison that seems real, whatever we do with our body, speech, and mind will ripen in us. So thinking of this, he says, he's talking to all sentient beings, my mothers of the past. Don't misunderstand causes and their effects. This cause makes this result, that cause makes that result. But instead, remain at ease in the state of threefold isolation. So this line is kind of the heart of this Doha. Okay, the world's a mess. How do we free ourselves? We remain in threefold isolation. It means our body doesn't get involved, our speech doesn't get involved, and our mind doesn't get involved. One way of doing that's by going to retreat, where you actually withdraw from everything. And so you've only got your retreat room, your mind's not involved with family, environment, all the rest of it, news. But the best way is wherever you go, you just don't get involved unless it's through compassion. So it says, this is so nice. Remain at ease. You are cool. You are so cool, man. You know, you are just not drawn into it. You're not pulled into it, the gossip, the conversations. You're not pulled into it with your mind. And you're not pulled into it by acting and reacting with the mind poisons behind your physical action. If you do this, then the Guru's magnificent, compassionate heart is always there. And the Guru isn't somebody where you can go and see them and you spend a week with them and you're close, and then you go away and you're 3-4 months away and they seem far away. If we remain at ease in the 3 levels of transcendence, body, speech, and mind, with, as he said before, devotion of the 3 kinds arising, then the blessing is always with you. The blessing that you feel in the Guru's presence before, when there was far and near, is always there if we maintain the 3 levels of transcendence. when one realizes the quintessential point of the two truths concerning the specific results related to each single cause, the nature of all sentient beings of the three realms is never seen as other than that. So the quintessential point of the two truths is relative ultimate truth. The relative truth happens through interdependence, karma, what he's been talking about. I'm Ken because of my karma. You're you because of your karma. This is the relative truth. All of your history, all the causes and effects have ended up with you as you are today and me as I am today. That is as it is. But ultimately the whole thing's been like a dream, a mirage, because it changes all the time. You can't grab it. It's already changed. It's already new. Past has gone. There's not one bit of it left. The future's not happened. There's now, but now already, that was 2 seconds ago. It's devoid of any lasting, substantial own reality. It's an interaction, an interdependence in our consciousness. All the time, that voidness is the one truth of everything. Nothing exists in its own right. Everything is interaction, interdependence. So when we realize that, then the nature of all sentient beings, as we saw in the Buddha nature text, has never been apart from Buddha mind. Everyone becomes Buddha in our enlightened Vajrayana awareness. If we stay in that transcendence, we stay inside the blessing, then samsara, your samsara, that means, nobody else is your samsara, would unravel itself all by itself. This is marvelous. You don't have to get in there with a toolbox. You know, some workers, they've got a big toolbox, right? Whatever they do, plumber, electrician, they've got all their tools inside, right? Your life, in all its complexity, all the karma you carry, you don't have to get in there and sort out this bit and sort out that bit using this tool and that tool. If we stay in the Guru's blessing, Mahamudra blessing, Buddha nature blessing, and that automatically means we transcend getting involved with body, speech and mind. If we do that, then it's amazing. Our life unravels by itself. The karma sorts itself out. They compared sometimes to like a knot of snakes, which just all unwind themselves and slide off. Don't need to do anything. You don't need to get in there and try and untangle the snakes. That might be a bit dangerous. You just watch them untangle themselves. It's really true. I've seen this with people who really practice Mahamudra, Buddha nature teachings, Vajrayana. Everything sorts itself out. It's the most wonderful magic in the universe. So the tangled web of the three realms, the sensorial realm, the realm of form meditation, the realm of formless meditation, they all sort themselves out through this vivid clarity of awareness, which is the Guru's blessing. Through one's innate nature, uncorrupted by conceptual mind. So here the thinking mind is seen as a corruption. It's a friend and a help. I mean, today I'm talking, you're listening, you're thinking. It's a help just now. But there comes a point, and there is a point in meditation, where thinking mind is just endless, blah, 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 blah. And beyond that, there is a space of such wonderful, timeless presence, full of love and wisdom and peace, never changes. So through this innate nature, the presence of the Guru becomes the play of an expanse arising of its own accord. So arising just very naturally. Life's problems and challenges that come, that's the Guru's blessing, to show us how to be more generous, how to be more ethical and moral, how to be more forbearing, how to be more diligent. All of the details of life take us through the journey of the 6 paramitas, and it all happens by itself. And the deeper the blessing, the more the accelerator pedal of that process is pushed down, and life becomes an incredible teacher. It's so this is what it means. This presence of the Guru, where everything is Dharma, brings you circumstances through which you can learn. Often challenging circumstances, but never mind. And then on the positive side, that blessing brings more and more realization of voidness, shunyata, and clarity. So clarity means things appear as they appear. Very, very clearly the play of karma, cause and effect, interdependence, that's so clear. And at the same time, the intangible changing nature, the void nature of all of that is also very clear. So when one is unattached to those profound spiritual experiences, then that's when, because of non-attachment, the 4 kayas of the Buddha mind manifest. Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, and the essence of them all, Svabhavikakaya. So this experience is called the Guru blended with one's own mind. This is the true giving up of ego when we practice Vajrayana. You just become irrelevant, and the Guru's presence, which is the presence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and saintly beings and siddhas, that's kind of there more and more. It just is. So it's called the Guru in one's mind. But it says even that's just an idea, just a name, and you cannot pinpoint it as anything specific. From this truth, intense yearning arises. We just long to go deeper and deeper, purer and purer, to become like our Guru. And from that, bodhicitta is aroused, because there's only one way you're going to become like your Guru, and that is through the loving care of all sentient beings, bodhicitta. The 3 realms of samsara, we had those before, are shaken from their depths. It's kind of like waking up from a dream. Samsara problem is it becomes real, it becomes solid, we get drawn into it. So it's all of a sudden like, wake up, or pinch yourself. And then this is a specific reference to one aspect of Chinrezig called Korwa Dundruk, Red Chinrezig. It's called Chinrezig who shakes samsara from its very depths. Your bodhicitta, your loving heart, is so overwhelmingly big that it just puts all of your samsaric solidity, just shatters it, gets rid of it. So this is the truth of everything. So it says, by the power of the truth, of the commitments of their non-conceptual compassion, may all the 1,002 Buddhas of the 3 times of this golden eon make manifest in a single instant this kingdom of Dharmakaya, the changeless, timeless mind, which transcends the intellect, and may they liberate all sentient beings into its essence. Just going back to the 16th Karmapa, then, he had, well, by the time he'd finished his 6-month tour of Europe, he had 200 birds, right? We were traveling round with us. Some of them were parked in Sameling, and that's a lot of birds. Some of them died, and they died in Samadhi, and it was one of the most amazing things. I remember in Birmingham, in England, one of the Karmapa's attendant, it was quite late at night, he said, come with me. And we went into a room, and that room was like, the moment you got through the door, there was a peace that just took you away infinitely. And then he led me over to a cage in which there were 2 birds together. They both died. And normally when birds die in a cage, they fall over and they're on the floor. These were on their perch and in meditation. Incredible presence around them, because Karmapa had liberated their minds. Somehow they had their own karmic connection. They'd been born as a pair of birds together. They died together. Karmapa liberated their minds. There were a couple of days like that, then they fell over. It's called Tukdam. I've seen this. This really happens. So this is what that last verse is. It's possible if there is the connection with the Guru, rather than going through more and more lives of suffering. You are just liberated into the timeless, loving, kind, wise peace of Dharmakaya. So thank you. Let's dedicate whatever was useful in this session. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So, thank you very much, and well, your turn. I'd welcome your feedback, because this is a bit of an experiment, this one, so I want to know if it was any value or...
Magnificent, straight to the heart.
Yeah, oh, good.
Ken, all your teachings are always of value.
Well, yeah,
but
I more or less, yeah.
What I particularly found illuminating and inspiring in today's teaching was the way that you interwove the Karmapa's Doha with your own experiences of him and the insights that you've gained from him and your other teachers, and that was a lovely combination. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's these Dohas, and then the life stories of the great masters, which are, they're about the experience of the great masters. They're usually an important part of our Vajrayana path. And in the old days in Samiling, when people were going to a long retreat, then we made a 4-year pre-retreat study program so that people were well prepared for the retreat. That was my job, facilitating that, teaching it, a lot of it. And so it meant studying the texts, like the Buddha nature text we just did, and Khenpoken's text and so on, but also studying the life stories of the great masters. So there was kind of more intimate, real feel of who they were and what they did and what their lives were like, rather than just the words of the teachings that we've got. And that was very good. Excuse me, that's my stomach.
Ken, I want to thank you from a deeply personal place. I took refuge with His Holiness the Karmapa almost 50 years ago, and today I feel like you know how they put those paddles on the heart and jump started? I feel like you did that to my relationship with him, and it feels the connection feels so alive right now, and I don't even have words to thank you enough for this. It was so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. For those of us who know him, the connection, it would never go. When we die, he'll be there. It's as simple as that.
I appreciate the thank you so much, of course,
Yeah.
first of all. The words of the Doha are beautiful. It's really nice to sort of hear it first and to get my own reaction, and then to hear your explanation of it. I when you were reading through it, or when the YouTube video was playing the first time, I got really hung up on that word isolation. It has such a negative connotation to me. And kind of made me afraid. But then hearing you explain it made it make sense and made it beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's still, the more I've been kind of thinking about it since then, it gives rise to this tension for me, which I think is maybe just the tension of renunciation and of ego not wanting to go along with the program here. And as I've worked with that in my own practice, it's sort of this fear of being alone and being apart and not being a part of the world. And then where I found some rest is just trying to do this, resting in the guru, resting in what is, to what limited ability I am able to do that. And I was just wondering, is that your suggestion for how to work with that kind of fear of renunciation?
I think the suggestions need to be always tailored to the person and their history, and everything that they are. Just from a translator's point of view, this term is difficult. There is no one English word. It's in Tibetan, it's Wempa or Empa, depending which part of Tibet you come from. And so actually the word isolation works best in French, because it's the same word you'd have for electrical insulation, so that you don't get a shock. Something's covered, the wire's covered, so that you can hold the rubber bit and you don't get a shock. And it's really, it's got that feeling. It means the samsara can't get to you. So then, depending on the person, sometimes samsara's like it's what's going on out there. In our friends, in our family, in our life, in our job, and all of that, it can't get to you. But the real meaning of samsara is about our own mind. It means our own mind's complicatedness and its emotional complexity and history and all the stuff we grew up with and traumas and that can't get to us. So it's got a nice sense. If you use the word transcendence, which is also implied in the term, it sounds like too much, and it also gives the feeling for those who aren't experienced meditators of somebody transcending. It can inflate your Dharma ego that I'm above all that, I'm a pure one, I'm a holy soul, and I'm beyond all of that. So isolation, but then also the fact of isolation when we go to retreat, or the reality of isolation as we practice Dharma, is that we are less and less part of the world. So it makes us weird in a kind of way. In other people's eyes, we're not buying into all the usual stuff. We're not doing what they're doing, thinking what they're thinking, gossiping what they're gossiping. And for us, because that's, for normal people, we just had Christmas, which is a nightmare for some people and a joy for others, because you're with your family around a table and it can be, wow, so sweet, or it can be, oh my God, I got to spend a couple of hours with them. All of that stuff is life. So once you extract yourself from it, then, and if you haven't reached a level of spiritual stability and blessing, then it's quite lonely, and it's heading towards more loneliness. It's something I've seen and it made me wonder for decades, actually, when you see the Rinpoches. Do they have buddies? People to hang out with. And they are very alone in a way. But the spiritual strength is that you can be alone but not lonely. Now that's easy to say, it's a nice little phrase. But in terms of work, and it's described in the 6 paramitas about the bodhisattva's forbearance and diligence mainly. It's, if even I was the last Buddhist left on the planet, I'd still do this. That kind of thing. And knowing it's the problem of having peers to relate to. People who are at where you're at. You can sit down and you're relaxed because you've got the same inner experience. And so there's a thing, you could call it cosmic aloneness rather than loneliness, which I think is a challenge for many people on a spiritual path. You certainly find it in Christian teachings as well as Buddhist teachings about, I think it's related to this dark night of the soul and a part of a traditional spiritual journey to realize how alone you are. It's the crossing of the desert before you enter into the real presence of all the saints, of all the bodhisattvas, of all the Buddhas. When they're really there, this is what the Karmapa is talking about in this one. He says the Buddha, the Guru inside your heart is beyond far and near. They're always there, always there. But to get to that point where you don't need an ego anymore. There's no you to be happy or unhappy. You need to cross a desert where you've let go of everything. And that can be a lonely place. So I think depending, then, the answer about how to cope with it. But certainly the advice in this Doha for people on the Mahamudra path is to practice the 3 levels of transcendence. And like most Mahamudra, it's a question of learning not to do something. You don't learn how to transcend, you learn how not to get involved. When your mind's getting involved with something, you just stop that rubbish, you just take it out. You fish it out before it gets too involved. It's like something that's fallen into the river, you pull it out. When your speech gets involved, people are talking, it's worldly stuff and gossip. And you just don't let your speech get involved. And the same with physical action. We realize what the body can do that harms and what the body can do that helps. So the things that harm, we have to learn to stop it so that we're only in what bodhisattvas do with their body, speech and mind. And that's great, we do that. So the transcendence isn't a kind of aloofness. We are transcending what causes suffering. And we are engaged in what causes happiness, but in a way which is beyond triplicity. We see it all like a dream. Dream bodhisattva doing dream bodhisattva actions, dreamlike bodhisattva actions in a dreamlike world. Then we're okay. So that's the transcendence. It's not sort of an aloofness. It's a quality of engagement which is pure. Pure in its essence and pure in what body, speech and mind are doing. So learning that, but it means mainly stopping whenever we see ego at work behind your speech, and ego at work behind what you're thinking and feeling and judging other people and so on. That's the meaning of isolation.
Thank you. That was all
Thank you for the questions.
very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah. Next week is normally it's our monthly Tonglen practice. I'm not quite sure yet whether that will be on or whether it will be an annual holiday from teachings or not. But anyway, we come back for these Doha teachings in 2 weeks' time. And that will be next year in terms of this world which seems so real and so existent. Then we change numbers of the year. But I wish you a very, very good week or 2 and look forward to seeing you soon. Take good care.
See you next year.
See you next year.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, everyone.
Brown now.
Bye-bye.